IVM.
Hey guys, IVM Podcasts is turning 7. Can you believe it? 7 years of pretty amazing ear catching content. It's been such an honor for me to be a part of this journey with these wonderful folk, and I really can't wait to see what the next 7 years bring. Stay with us. We live in a world where we are very likely to tell our daughters that they can be anything they want to be, an astronaut, a mother, or even both. But are we making sure that our boys are up to this transformation? Gender equality begins at home, and families are at the front lines of change. For the next generation, the examples set at home by parents, caregivers, and the extended families are shaping the way they think about gender and equality. From breaking down gender stereotypes to educating children about women's rights and gender equality, this episode of the Big Talk About Tiny Humans podcast has hosts Dr. Meghna and Devishobha discuss strategies on incorporating the gender equality mindset even when not everyone in your family is on board with the idea. Almost every job in the world requires training, except parenting.
You need to learn parenting on the job, and that can be really hard.
Here on Big Talk About Tiny Humans, we want to help you navigate the world of parenting better and make your lives a little bit easier.
Hi, I'm Meghna.
And hi, I'm Devishobha.
Every week, we bring you the best research on parenting,
Top tips from experts,
and actionable strategies to confront the numerous challenges that all parents and educators face.
So let's get started, shall we? We now live in a world where it really does not raise anyone's eyebrows to see women in any role. From her taking a spot in the boardroom to seeing her driving autos and planes and being mechanics. You name it, and we see a woman in any unconventional role. The question we are left with is, are our men ready for this inevitable transformation that the world is undergoing? Is our society ready for it? In today's episode, join us as I discuss with Dr. Meghna an important topic, raising feminist kids, which is important because it is also very misunderstood. We may think we as families do not know or follow patriarchy, but we would be surprised to know how insidiously it makes its way into our homes and what we can do to sensitize ourselves and the next generation to this concept that exists all around us. Welcome to this episode on the Big Talk About Tiny Humans podcast. So, Meghna, I hope your week has been good. Welcome to this wonderful episode. I know you've been wanting to talk about this for a very long time. You're very, very passionate about this topic.
Yes. Thank you, Shobha. I've been really looking forward to this episode because it just pains me how whenever I bring this up, I'm a feminist casually in my dance class, in front of my friends, while playing baddie, in social gatherings, people just do a double take like as if feminism is a dirty word. So that's why I was really looking forward to dispelling some myths and just really talking about what feminism is and why it's important to raise feminist girls and boys.
Absolutely. So, I would just like to begin by asking you, what is your definition of feminism and the reaction that you just described, right? About people doing a double take. Why do you think that happens?
So, my definition is as simple as feminism is basically about equal rights and equal opportunities for both men and women. It is, in two simple words, gender equality, which surprisingly is so difficult for people to understand. There are a whole lot of people who believe, Arey, the men and women are already equal. What is the need for feminism? There are some people who feel we've already arrived at equality for men and women, right? There are people who actually believe in equal rights, but find the word feminism, taboo word, right? So a whole lot of, you come across a whole lot of discourses like that. And I think the reason is, and this is what I feel, I don't know, I am a feminist, I'm an informed feminist, but I don't really know why the reason that, people bring it up as a dirty word. My guess is that, our specific views on feminism are really rooted in our own personal experiences. When we form opinions about whether I believe in feminism or not, whether I'm a feminist or not, we don't use any data, we don't use any research, we don't go looking for scientific studies, right? So if
Right.
we've personally faced bias, right, if we've personally faced discrimination, we know beyond doubt that patriarchy exists, right? But if we haven't faced it ourselves, we often doubt that inequality happens. And I think this is the reason why a lot of people become uncomfortable, because they don't, either they're men and women who've not like very blatantly faced patriarchy, which is very, which is almost ironic because everybody faces patriarchy because it is all around us. Yeah. And or you don't want to openly admit that you perhaps you have a gender bias and you might unconsciously perpetrate it, right? So it could be either reason, but the fact is that you cannot escape it. Patriarchy exists, and instead of being an ostrich and burying our heads in sand, it is better to acknowledge it so that we can do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely well said, Meghna. Actually, this brings to mind something that I actually read and listened to a long time ago, but it has stuck to me so much only because of the fact that you brought up. It's because of the fact that it exists all around us, but we fail to notice it until
Hmm.
somebody puts it in front of us and we suddenly realize that, Ariva, this is what is happening all the time.
Hmm.
Right. So, I mean, very beautifully said. On this note, we are going to take a short break. And on coming back, I'm going to give you the reference to that beautiful story that I will share after the break.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. Our storytellers and storytellers Vineet meets legendary singer Usha Uthup and writer Shrishti Jha, who worked on the singer's authorized biography, The Queen of Indian Pop. What happens when a Mauryan spy meets the chief soldier of the Kadamba Nadu on a dark night? Kavita Jiva tells us on the Venbel Senni Tamil podcast. On Audio Gyan, Kedar talks to Mohar Roy, co-founder of Co-Design, about building branding systems. On Press Decode, Sarah Bhakta and Prafulla touch upon the heartbreaking topic of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And on IVM Likes, Zalak asks Chalasmi and Antariksh about their thoughts on the movie Gangubai Kathiawadi. So, on a personal note, I wanted to let you all know that this week marks the 7th anniversary since I started IVM. I'm eternally grateful to the team we have here, especially Kavita Rajwade and Tejas Sringarpure, who have been here since the beginning. They've seen the struggles, our eventual acquisition by Pratilipi, and our continued struggles to make podcasting a large and thriving part of the media industry. We have the best hosts in the world, and I have to say that I'm so glad and so grateful that they have chosen to work with us. And finally, I'd like to say thank you to you, the millions of folks who have heard or watched our content. All I can say is, you ain't seen nothing yet. I hope you join us as we continue this journey. In the meanwhile, do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Also, don't forget to rate us on any platform you're listening to. You can also check us out on YouTube. To get a list of all of our channels, you can go to ivmpodcast.com/YouTube, where you can go to all the channels. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, SBI Life Insurance, Bank of Baroda, Max Life Insurance, India Water Portal, and HDFC Life Insurance. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Okay, so welcome back. And here's the short story I wanted to share with our audience on this beautiful topic of feminism. We all think it doesn't exist. We all think that we are not touched by patriarchy, even though all of us have been, like Meghna had said. This is a story of Hari Krishna, the chess genius, right? And he shares a very beautiful experience from his childhood of how his mother taught him chess from a very young age, from the age of 8. And she started teaching him from the time that he had just begun to, learn the moves and everything. And he kind of got into chess very inadvertently. And because of her encouragement, and just because she was so good at it. And while she was training him, he kind of suggested to her that if you're so good at it, right? Because he started kind of noticing that everybody at home had a hobby, had a passion, but his mom was just like, taking care of everyone. he puts it very beautifully. He just says mom was just mom, she was just taking care of everybody's needs and just giving impetus to everybody's passions, everybody's interests, but nothing of her own that she could pursue exclusively. And he suggested to her that why don't you go ahead and play chess yourself, why don't you take it up as a passion for yourself. And of course she didn't respond, but later on at office, when she was also a working mom, so she won at office. She won, a very casual tournament, and then from there on, she went on to win a district tournament, and from then again to the state level, and then finally she also made it there, and she made it to the national level. And the national level required her to travel to Jaipur, and of course she couldn't do that without his dad's permission, right? So so when she asked him, he didn't even look up, and he said no, right? And that's when this little boy, he had the brainwave where he said, okay, this is summer, so why not we just go to Jaipur for our vacation? Let's choose Jaipur as a vacation, and it can also double up as mom's destination for her national championship tournament. And that's what they did. And at this note, he says that somehow the family vacation took up more importance, more prominence than his mom's need to go and play at a national level, just because it was just her passion. It was not something that it was not at the forefront of the family's priorities. So this is how patriarchy shows up in very, very unobtrusive ways. And it becomes, the danger here is that it becomes so common that
And
don't even
normalized.
it's so normalized, we don't even realize that it is something absurd, something unusual that's going on with this one person at home, right? So very beautifully put, Meghna. I think what you said was just bang on. And
What beats me in this
I would
story, Shobha, is also
yeah,
that
yeah,
the mother has to take permission from the father. This in
yeah,
itself shows
absolutely.
that there is inequality. Why does the woman have to take permission from the man? Does the man take permission from the woman to pursue his
Absolutely.
passions and go out to station and do something? I mean, right? Just the
Absolutely.
act of taking permission, that I have to, take permission to go somewhere, is
Yeah.
patriarchal.
It is. And I mean, I have put it very briefly, but the way he describes the story, he puts in the details like, his father is reading the newspaper. He doesn't even look up. She's just talking to the back of the newspaper. I mean, it's an amazing story, which I will share the link to in the podcast description for our audience, because it's such a beautiful story and it's so relatable. It is a must listen and a must read for everyone. So on this note, I just want to know, Meghna, from you, why do we need feminism on whatever we have now in front of us? Why do you think we need this concept?
Well, we need feminism because, there is conscious and unconscious gender bias and gender discrimination, which is rampant, right? We need feminism because, this bias, even though we might deny it, exists. I mean, there is research after research done on it. It exists in academia, it exists at the workplace, it exists when you become a parent and when you're giving the choice of toys or the choice of clothes that you pick up for your child. It exists everywhere. Research has shown, and your one's own experience is enough to corroborate how men receive higher pay for the same job. Both men and women are much more likely to vote to hire a man applicant versus a woman applicant,
Mm.
even though they might have the same record. Faculty will exhibit a bias against female students if it's about picking up students for science. Employers discriminate against women employees who are mothers but not fathers. So this exists all around us, from cooking and cleaning, taking care of children, taking care of elderly. Women carry out 2.5 times more unpaid household and care work than men. So
Yeah.
by any standard, our society's expectations are very different from men and women, and it's okay if they were just different, but they're outright unequal. Women do a double shift everywhere now that
Absolutely.
women are entering the workforce, they are doing the double shift. Is it fair that when a woman becomes a mother, it's automatically assumed, it's not even questioned, that she's the one who's supposed to be waking the nights up for the baby, even though we might have facilities now such as expressing the milk and freezing it and having the father feed the baby. But no, I mean, so my problem is with all of these things that don't even get questioned. I mean, on one hand you have things like domestic violence and rape and all, which is very blatantly obviously patriarchal. But what I am talking about are these subtle signs of gender bias, of inequality. So that is also very problematic, is my point.
Yeah, that's exactly this. I mean, this story is such a great example for this, right? I mean, look at the mom character there. She's educated. She's able to train her son in such such an erudite game, and she can, on her own merit, she can go up to the national level and probably even win it, and she still has to
take permission,
wait for somebody's approval to do this. And when it's so obvious that this is such a rare opportunity, I mean, this is like, so you put it very well. And on the point where you said that managers do not prefer women, I can vouch for the fact that it is so true, because I have faced it myself as
oh really?
New mom twice. I was told that when I was working, I was told that because I'm a mom now, I wouldn't be the first choice for new projects, because obviously
you were told that to your face.
No, obviously not to my face. Not to my face, but
okay.
But
but it was very obvious.
I mean, obviously you cannot say it to your face because policies, but so I mean, it's pretty obvious. And even success at work is met with some kind of skepticism, for women. It's not entirely, as if it's not entirely on merit. It has to come with something else. I mean, that kind of view is a sign of such a deep-seated patriarchal society, right? So, I mean, what you brought up here was just point on. I just would like to know, from this point onwards, because we are already seeing such a huge change. And see, we have come from a point where women were not even allowed to vote, right? To a point where it's not really surprising to see women running countries right now. But how do we seed this thought in families? How do we make these subtle signs go away, and how do we redefine these, especially for the next generation, especially for our boys? What do you think we can do?
I think that's a very good question, because as you rightly said, we've begun to raise our daughters more like our sons, right? But that work is incomplete until we raise our sons more like our daughters.
Right.
So you cannot say that, what, I want to enroll my girl in a football and very proudly announce that's okay, but it's incomplete unless I'm also enrolling my boy in a ballet class, right? So I'll explain what I mean by this. So there are certain characteristics, there are certain areas, there are certain hobbies or things or activities or what you may, which are considered feminine, like skills like cooperation and empathy, diligence, are considered to be feminine, right? But it is a fact that in today's modern day work and school, they are increasingly valued. They are increasingly valued in jobs that require these skills, right? So we are actually doing a disservice to our sons if we are not instilling these so-called feminine skills in them, right? We are doing a disservice to our boys if we are not teaching them about expressing their feelings, if we are not affirming their choices, if we are not reassuring them that it's okay to be different, and if we are not encouraging a culture of acceptance. We are doing a great disservice. So it's okay. It's a very good thing to be able to raise our daughters more like our sons, confident, you can do anything better, and all of that is okay. But we also need to look at our sons, and that's why I love your question. So let me break this down into, say, five steps. Okay. And I will acronym these 5 steps as FEMINN, FEMINN. That will be easy to remember. I've come up with this acronym just so that it's raising feminist children, raising feminist boys. So FEMINN. So what does FEMINN stand for? F in FEMINN stands for fighting stereotypes. And these stereotypes can also be held by us as parents. So what could be those? We need to fight those stereotypes, including our own. Do we make sexist jokes? Do we make sexist comments? Do we say sometimes, do we find ourselves saying to our son, don't run like a girl, or don't be a sissy, or, any of its more offensive synonyms? Do we make sexist jokes, right? Do we tease our kid when they have friends of the opposite gender? Research shows that, children who are encouraged to play with friends of the opposite gender, they learn better problem solving and communication skills. So it starts from home. It starts from looking within ourselves and seeing what are the stereotypes which we are unconsciously, following, which we have. And it's not our fault. A lot of times it's not like we're doing it deliberately. It's just so ingrained in us that, it's a good idea to become conscious of it. So that's F of fighting stereotypes. The next step is E. And this is a very important step because of this whole thing about, oh, you're a boy, you're not supposed to cry. So E is let them express emotions. Let the boys cry. Research shows, Shobha, boys and girls, they cry the same amount when they're babies and toddlers. And at around age 5, that preschooler stage, that is the stage that is the same age that my boy is right now, by the way. So you can imagine how careful I am about this right now. It is this age that boys get the message that anger is acceptable, but they're not supposed to show other feelings. They're not supposed to cry. They're not supposed to show their vulnerability. That is weakness. That is girly. So the second E is super important. Let your boys cry. Let them express emotions. The third step is modeling. Unless we give our kids, unless we give our boys role models, boys, again, research shows that boys are particularly responsive to spending time with role models. So we need to give our boys male role models who demonstrate empathy, who openly express their feelings, who share household work, who share care work. But we also need to give our boys strong female role models. Right? Women in sports, women in politics, women in leadership positions. It all starts from home. And what parents can do, don't divide your housework and childcare, by gender. Divide it by the amount of time that a parent has in doing something. Right? So resist those gender roles at home. So that's M for modeling, because what your boys and girls are seeing happening at home is what they will replicate in their own adult relationships. Okay. Right. The fourth step is I, involve. Involve your kids in caring for themselves and in caring for others, and especially boys. We need to teach our sons to cook. We need to teach them to clean. We need to teach them to look after themselves, to be equally competent in home. Like what you said in the beginning, right? We're teaching our daughters to be in the office, right? So we need to teach our sons to be competent at home. Okay, we need to show them, and we need to have these conversations with our boys, how men can balance work and family, and how sons and not just daughters are expected to care for parents, elderly, blah, blah, blah. Right? Like, what can you do about it? When somebody is sick, when your friend is sick and you're probably making soup for them, enlist your boys' help. Give them responsibility in caring for a pet, caring for a younger sibling. Encourage them to babysit, encourage them to teach a younger child or coach a younger child. So when you put them in these, roles of care, they learn that it is expected of me to be caring towards somebody else. Okay.
Absolutely.
So that's I, involve them in caring for self and others. And the fifth step is N, FEMINN, N. That's N for no. And that's really, really subtle, but really important. The no here stands for saying no to traditional differences. You see, kids, for them to reach their full potential, they need to follow their own interests, whether those interests are traditional or not. So, for example, if my 5-year-old boy, and he's done that, and that's why I'm giving you a real life example. My boy sometimes tells me, because, I have an elder girl, she's 7 and my boy is 5. And when he sees Misha dress up in all these frilly frocks and fairy stuff and pink and fluff, he says, Mama, I also want to wear. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I don't even have to think twice about it. I don't even have to
Hmm.
think that if he wears that frilly pink frock and goes downstairs, he will be
Hmm.
teased,
Hmm.
because I am not afraid that my boy will be teased. I am just
Hmm.
concerned about those boys or girls teasing him, because guess what? What are the kind of
Hmm.
stuff that, what are the kind of ideas about gender and boy and girl differences are they being raised with? So it's not my problem, it's their problem. And this has happened many, many times, because Mohil loves to dress up in Misha's frocks, loves. And I have never, ever told him. And women, other mothers have pulled me up for this in the playground. Your boy's wearing a frock. I'm like, okay, and when I say
Hmm.
this, they're okay. They take a step back, and I'm like, okay. I'm like, I know what you're trying to tell me. I will not be shamed by you. I will not be shamed
Hmm.
by your, ideas about what my child should be wearing. So let them be themselves. Offer
Right.
stuff, offer toys, offer activities which are not gendered. When I go with my kids to purchase a gift for their friend's birthday party, the first question that I'm asked in the gift shop, I'm like, okay, the child's age is 6. I need a gift for a 6-year-old. And the first question I'm asked is, boy or girl, madam? I'm like, how does it
Exactly.
matter? How does it
Yeah.
matter? Why are you asking me the gender?
Hmm.
Just show me
Hmm.
toys for a 6-year-old.
Hmm.
So, right. So we need to encourage boys to try out art classes and ballet classes and dress up activities. We need to offer them open-ended stuff, right? Like playing with
Yeah.
blocks or clay. It's okay if they play with dolls. It's perfectly legit and fine. Do not only buy trucks and those action figures for them, right? So
Right.
please say no to traditional interests and differences by sort of being open ended about what you're offering or what you're exposing your boys and your girls to. And the
Right.
other N for femin, and the other N is again no, but that is basically teaching your boys and girls, but especially boys, that no means no, which basically means
Oh,
teaching them
wow.
consent,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it is extremely important that we require our kids to ask before they touch another person's body, as early as preschool, as early as 2 or 3 years of age. Teach them the power of the word no. For example, if you're roughhousing them, or if you're wrestling with them, or if you're tickling with them, firstly, you should even ask your kids before tickling them. But, anyways, stop it as soon as they say the word no or stop. It means I respect your body. When I say this in parents' workshop, they're like, oh, but that you're saying, madam, that we can't even touch our kids without, their consent. I'm like, yeah, of course you can't. Who told you can? Who gave you the idea
Hmm.
that you can touch another human being, even if it's your own child, without their consent? Right? So because it's like monkey see, monkey do. Whatever we do to our kids is what they are going to learn to do to others. Right? If we
Yeah.
treat their bodies with respect, they are going to do that to others, right? So
Hmm.
those are 5 steps, Shobha, FEMIN, femin, of raising feminist boys and girls.
Awesome. I think you put it very, very beautifully, and I think you covered everything. So I mean, you have taken everything into consideration and put it so succinctly. So thank you for that. On the note where you've brought up all these great examples and these illustrations of where we need to use all of these in our day-to-day lives,
Mm-hmm.
there's just one very interesting experiment that came to my mind as you were talking about
Mm.
fighting stereotypes and gender neutrality from a very young age. There's this beautiful experiment that has been conducted where I think it went viral also on social media, where a group of teachers, actually a group of people, walk into a classroom and they just
Oh, yes, that
ask,
video. Oh,
yeah,
that's lovely.
yeah, that is
Yes, yes,
amazing. So
yes.
there's this teacher who asked her class full of students to draw like a mountaineer or a pilot or an
A
astronaut or
scientist, an engineer,
scientist,
a
engineer, or even
firefighter.
or a beautician,
Hmm.
different kinds of
Hmm.
roles. And then the gender um perception becomes so clear with that
Hmm.
exercise. Like, people
Yeah.
are drawing men for mountaineers, women for beauticians, scientists men, then
Yeah.
teacher women. I mean, and these are very young children, mind you. These are not
These
even
are
like, they're not,
preschoolers. Yeah.
yeah, they're very young children. And imagine the kind of,
Yeah.
the seeding that has happened already by that time,
Yeah.
right? So it's an amazing experiment and tells so much about these, very little ways that we influence them.
And then the teacher
um,
actually invites these actual professionals in the
yeah,
classroom.
and then all of them are just the opposite.
Just the
Right? It's
opposite. Like you
amazing.
have a
Yeah.
woman mountaineer, a woman scientist, and
Mountaineer.
a man,
Yeah. Beautician.
beautician,
Yeah.
and it's beautiful. But it's unfortunate, but it's corroborated by research. What was shown in this video, research shows that
Right.
children as young as 3, they start absorbing
Right.
stereotypes. Right.
Right.
So that is
Yeah.
why I feel that, we as parents need to be so mindful of our own actions, of the stuff that
Yeah.
we're exposing our kids to in terms of what we're buying for them, toys, clothes, what kind of friendships we have and they have, so many, like, that's why we need to start having conversations about gender roles early on.
Yeah. And the fact that you said that children cry the same amount when they are, very young, I mean, as babies and toddlers, and then it just suddenly changes. I can vouch for this because I had once done an article on Kids Kinta on this exact thing where math anxiety, right? Math anxiety is way more in girls than in boys. And that's because of this perception that is seeded in them that you are not a natural in math just because you're a girl. And research shows that just this, insidious, this non-direct ways of communicating to them that, this requires a different kind of wiring, this kind requires a different kind of a, thinking, thought process. I mean, this can make such a huge difference in schools, in their performance, in their perception of themselves, in their perception of their social reality, everything. It just, I mean, these small things can become huge things for them. So thank you for bringing that. And I'm also very happy to note that you brought up gender neutrality, because again, I'm very happy to note that in India, there are toy makers that have, taken up this mission and are producing gender neutral toys, clothes, and everything that does not, I mean, that moves away from this concept of seeding gender perception. So I think you brought up all the great points. I just want to understand from you, what are your suggestions for reading, viewing, or even podcast, listening to podcasts? Do you have any suggestions for our parents, for our children, for interaction?
I have
what do you
tons.
have on your list?
How much time do you have? I have tons and tons, because as you can imagine, that is what I keep, consuming myself and exposing my kids to. So I'll give you a couple of titles for books for kids.
Right.
And then, I'll go on to what adults can consume. So these are some of my favorite books that I read over and over again to my kids. So there's this book called Pink and Blue by Ritu Vaishnav, which is meant for preschoolers. It's a beautiful book that again explores, why only pink for girls and why only blue for boys. No Difference Between Us by Janine Sanders. That's for, preschoolers and primary schoolers. Of course, my favorite books, Good Night Stories for Rebel Girls and Good Night Stories for Rebel Boys by Elena Favili. They're there for 7+ years. And Boys Will Be Boys. It's by an Indian author, Aparna Jain, again for 7+ years. So, I mean, if you go on my Insta, you'll find a much longer list, but this is like a abridged list of books on gender equality that you can read to your kids. As you can see, the some of the books that I've mentioned start from preschool level, three years of age, so it's never too early. For adults, for you yourself, for parents, I highly recommend the podcast, The Guilty Feminist. It is an amazing podcast. It's by these two Brit women, Deborah Frances White and Susan Wokoma. And it's very, very interesting. I mean, I highly recommend it. I'll recommend 2 books. One of them is by my favorite feminist author. Her name is Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie.
Oh,
right,
yeah,
you may have heard
the
of
writer.
her.
Oh,
right.
yeah.
She is amazing. Okay, so she's written this book.
Oh my
She's
God.
amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I actually read one of her books, Americana, as part of my book club. And then I was hooked. I was like, wow. Okay. And then I happened to read her book, We Should All Be Feminists. And there's a TED talk on this same, which is actually a TED Talk, which was converted into a book. So I highly recommend that TED Talk. And she's recently written another one. It's called A Feminist Manifesto in 15 Suggestions. So what I like about Adichie is that she writes so simply and yet conveys her point, right? It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And another book,
absolutely
by the way,
agree on that. Yeah.
Feminism doesn't all have to be about, bra burning, serious stuff, That's why my second recommendation of a book is by this author called Caitlyn Moran. It's actually her own memoir. And it's obviously nonfiction. It's called How to Be a Woman. And the most amazing part about this book is, Shobha, it's a laugh out loud book. When I picked up this book, I would read it at all sorts of, because I always carry my book whenever I'm reading it to everywhere I go. I would be in a public place standing and reading the book, and I would just burst out laughing. It's funny, okay? This book is so I highly recommend that you pick it up for understanding what feminism is, but also for some laughs, because this woman is funny. So those are my recommendations. In addition to that, there is this amazing gentleman. His name is Rajat Mittal. He has started this whole newsletter. It's called Boyish. Okay. And I subscribe to that newsletter. It's amazing. And it's once a month newsletter. And every month he brings forth a story of an Indian man who has defied gender stereotype by excelling in some non-masculine career, like a chef a salsa dancer or once he covered Prem, who's the author of, Chacha Chaudhary, and so he was analyzing how he's such an antithesis to the image of a traditional hero, right? A thin, puny Sardar with a turban, So it's very interesting. Boyish is the name of his newsletter. I highly recommend everybody to subscribe to that. So it's amazing. So if you read up, and if you sort of listen to this podcast, and if you read up all these books and also introduce your children to these books, your worldview will truly open.
Absolutely. I mean, this list is great. I also think we should definitely add this book to the list, Pink Brain, Blue Brain. Right.
I've heard of it.
This is by Lise Elliott, and this is an amazing book that talks about the neurology behind the brains and all the talk behind the gender perceptions. Right. So that's a great book as well. So
which is why which is why books like Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus are so passé.
Right.
Because they are actually working towards segregating the genders even more. Right. That book might be funny and it might have been a bestseller, but I don't think it stands at all its ground today in today's context.
Right. Yeah. I mean, a lot has changed, and I think definitely books drive society in that way. So, I mean, your book list, I loved your recommendation. I'm already looking at Boyish now. So,
okay.
My suggestion to our audience is, please do look up these wonderful, amazing suggestions by Dr. Meghna, and do catch us on our next podcast, where we will bring up another amazing topic which you will gain a lot from and enjoy listening to us. Thank you so much.
So that's our episode for today. Thank you for listening to Big Talk About Tiny Humans, our podcast for parents and educators.
Hope you enjoyed it, and don't forget to share it with your friends and family.
Listen and subscribe to Big Talk About Tiny Humans on the IVM Podcasts app, website, and all major audio platforms. We are available everywhere.
You can follow us on social media and online. Meghna is at The Therapist Mommy on Instagram and YouTube. And you can check out her website, raisingfamilyacademy.com, for a transformative course on raising a child with emotional intelligence.
And Devishobha is at KidsKintha on Twitter and Instagram. And check out kidskintha.com for in-depth articles and events on parenting and child development.
While you're at it, do also check out other great shows from the IVM Podcasts network at shows.ivmpodcasts.com. And IVM is on social media at IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
We'll catch you again on our next episode.
You're the people pleaser, right?
Oh, yes.
Or then desperately seeking the one? Or wait, you're the one who doesn't think they're ever good enough. So much drama. And for what? Is it doing you any good? Listen to me. I'm Chetna, your favorite positive action coach. Yes, I'm the one who has been dropping all those truth bombs on every episode. And it's time you learn to say no to drama. That's also what my podcast is called. And a new episode is out every Monday and Wednesday on the IVM Podcast app, website, as well as all major podcasting platforms.
Love fighting?
We've got you covered.
Check out our show, The Fighting Goat, where we, the voices of the internet, Arjun Chipalkatti and Somesh Kamra, bring to you crazy weekly action on your favorite combat show, The Fighting Goat.
Be it commentary, breakdown, predictions, analysis of styles and techniques.
And of course, your round of favorite fighters.
You can listen to us every Thursday on the IBM Podcast app, website, and all major podcast streaming platforms.